that helped me generate much of the presentation, and then Copilot gave me a wonderful template, and then I still spent the next 12 hours making adjustments. So, but it was
Oh
a good
yeah,
help.
yeah. I
So,
used Copilot for my last presentation. I did a presentation on the SQL Server PostgreSQL Throwdown.
oh yes,
Yeah, and, I had it set up to Postgres, and the SQL Server was in a boxing ring, and I had AI draw me the the elephant in there, and I used Clippy for the representing SQL Server, and it came out great.
yeah.
So,
I think I watched the recording of it because I had to miss that meeting. But
oh
yeah, it
yeah, yeah.
was good. It's good.
So
So,
speaking of recording, we're recording right now, just so everybody knows.
okay.
So
Right.
anyway, why don't you take it away, Ron?
Okay. Again, thank you, everybody. I have been doing various data and software development stuff for a little while. Uh, and technical support, software development, database stuff, pre-sales engineer, everything involved with data. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. And the most recent 6, 7, 8 years, I've been working with a data warehouse that was originally on premise and a CRM system that was originally on premise. And we needed to modernize. So I thought I would share the story of what we did, how we got there. By all means, feel free to chime in with any questions. Let's see. I'm trying to click the page next. Oh, here we go. So I'll just give a little bit of a introduction, tell what we did, and give you some of the benefits.
Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I thought I was.
I see it.
You see
Oh,
it?
you see it? Okay,
Yep.
everybody else see it?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay.
Oh, and I see it too now.
All right. Was it a little bit cloudy?
No, it wasn't cloudy at all. It was actually crystal clear.
Was it kind of azure? Anyway, I know I'm bad with puns, so I apologize.
I thought it was a great segue.
It was. It was. Anyway, not that I want to read the whole screen to you, but I'm not sure if you all have experienced this, but when you have a lot of systems on premise, you're almost locked in. You're in a box, right? We had a CRM system that really had way too much data sitting in it and redundant processes on old servers. We couldn't connect it to other third-party tools, tools that had to do with texting, tools that had to do with the phone system, tools that had to do with even connecting to our data warehouse was tricky. Our other on-premise data warehouse. And it seemed like every year we would spend time, if we needed to upgrade something, you have to get a test server. You have to install everything on the test server. You have to make sure everybody's okay with it. And it's weekend work, it's nighttime work because you can't interrupt people during the day. There's a problem, and you're repeating all of these upgrade tasks. You have to worry about the operating system. If the operating system is it going to break the SQL database? You put the user interface on one server, you put the database on another server, you put security stuff on a third server, and any one of them could fail. So you're spending all this time doing all this maintenance work when it'd really be nice to add value to the data you have. That's the purpose of our business, right? To add value, not be busy technically. So what did we do? We had to get our Microsoft Dynamics environment to the cloud, and we had to get our data warehouse, which was a local SQL server, to the cloud so that we could not have the previous screen and have something very integratable. And we did it in these two phases. First, we took care of the Dynamics CRM, and then immediately after, we started working on our data warehouse. And obviously, you have to go through key decisions. So, first thing, you got to find out what can you do in the cloud, right? Then we discovered these terms called platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service. Well, which one? Which one do we pick? Well, you got to pick all of them. You don't just do it the same way in the cloud as you did on premise with a different URL. So then we had to decide: do we hire a consulting firm to do this? Do we do this in-house? Do we run things in parallel? And we really wanted to improve our skills. Then there's always the debate: do we do something different than Dynamics? Well, let's talk about Salesforce. Let's talk about other ones out there. And it's funny, we would have, obviously every company, you have new people coming in, other people leaving, which is it's healthy, get new ideas. And some people would tell us, oh, Salesforce is so much better, so much better. It works better. Well, what does it do better? I don't know. It just works better. Well, how does it work better? Is it easier to add context? No. Is it easier to add businesses? No. Is it easier to see leads? No. What does it do better? I don't know. It's just better. So then we looked at the costs. We had to evaluate that. Then we looked at the Azure SQL Server. There was a lot of decisions with that. We had to think about, do you just move the database over, on like a lift and shift? But we really thought, if we're going to the cloud, let's really discover all the cloud features. There's a reason there's all these cloud tools out there. The thing that made me nervous as we talked with other businesses, I talked to a lot of people, similar businesses, their story. I got some ideas from other companies, how they did their migration. And the last thing I wanted to do was run a SQL query that would cost me $20,000. I was very nervous about that because I didn't want to report to the people above me, hey, I did this select star from this table accidentally, and that's why the monthly invoice is so big. So I was paranoid about that. So we wanted to set things up in the cheapest possible way and expand from there as we needed. And the biggest, I guess, conviction we had was, maybe you guys have experienced this, we want to keep the plane in the air. We want to be flying this while changing the engine. I just do not believe in the Big Bang Theory. I like to slowly move things over. So we had to plan it that way. It was a slower migration because of it, but I think it was more accurate. And I wanted to make any rollbacks very negligible. In that, we had to do a lot of testing for the CRM. We had to bring in the business users, bring in the subject matter experts, and not sure how many of you like to get involved with design meetings with users, but you could have 20 people sitting in a room and they absolutely say the system works this way until you put it on the screen and they discover the system doesn't work that way. So you get 20 people in a room, you end up with 30 opinions. But it was actually a very healthy thing because we learned how the business worked as well as how the data worked and the technology. So it was good. It was good for everybody. One thing we discovered with the Azure SQL database was the data transfer process was way different than anything on premise. We have all kinds of SSIS packages on our local SQL Server database. And yes, you could do SSIS packages in Azure, but again, we wanted to leverage the new technology. Wanted to go as platform as a service as possible, because that's the newest, coolest stuff, and it would help us become more self-sufficient and improve our skill set. And there's a reason that stuff's invented. It helps the business be better. So let's look at the new stuff. In our analytics group, they had to do a whole lot of validation on our data, running things in parallel, local database, cloud database. Do the numbers look the same? Okay. And I'll give more details to this later. So far, so good. Everybody with me?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you looked into moving to the cloud, what about having on-premise backup? What happens if Azure isn't available?
Well, thankfully, on the Dynamics 365 side, it's all on Microsoft to keep their Dynamics online.
True, but if it's all on Microsoft, but if Microsoft can't be online, what is Carl Malden used to say? What will you do? What will you do?
Well, thankfully for us, because let's just say if Dynamics was not available longer than whatever the terms of the contract, what's the contract? What's the commitment of Microsoft for Dynamics? Is it 99.99% online time? So if it's down longer than 15, we could survive a little while, like a couple hours, with it being offline, because we were processing transactions 24/7 in our CRM environment. Couple other environments, that's a real concern. And as far to answer your question about the Azure SQL database, when we had that CrowdStrike issue last July, I don't know how many of you experienced that, the CrowdStrike thing.
Yeah, I'm sure we all did.
What's that?
I'm sure we all did.
Yeah. Thankfully, the Microsoft support did a great job. We were actually back online. It was in the evening. We were back online that evening, and our number crunching people were all gone for the day. So we had kind of like if truly our Azure SQL database went down, the region went down, we have other ways of getting people critical information from some of our external systems if we really need it. Now, I will say this, we're never in the done state, right? We're always growing, learning, and I'm looking at better ways to handle the redundancy, just in case, looking at the redundant regions and things like that. So always room to improve for sure.
Well, at my company, our systems are going in AWS, but we're also going to be on-prem as a backup. So that prevents us from doing things like having, taken advantage of RDS. So when we're in AWS, we're actually creating virtual servers and installing Postgres on those virtual servers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're replicating those to our on-prem data center.
So your company didn't trust the different regions across the country or even the world?
We can't use the world.
Okay.
We're
But still, you could do
prevented
like the East Coast and the West Coast, or,
Well, yeah, and we do that. We do that, but no, they didn't trust
Wow.
that we could have, and this has actually happened where the East Coast and the West Coast was in fact down.
Hmm.
Now, we've got in our recovery, disaster recovery scenarios, we've got a 2-hour window. So it is an instant, but we've got a 2-hour window to recover and go to on-prem. So in the case of Rod, he's saying that, you wait for Dynamics 365 to come back online. And conceivably, in our 2-hour window, AWS could, and more likely than not, would come back online. But sorry, I didn't want to hog the show.
No, that's okay. Those are good thoughts. Thankful we don't have as strict business need or strict government requirements to force it online or on-premise backup. But good thought. And I do want to improve some of the redundancy as time. It's a journey.
Yes, it is.
So, yes, as I said before, we got Dynamics in online. We got the data warehouse running. We actually ran the data warehouse in parallel for a whole season on premise and in the cloud, and slowly switched some of our reports that went to them. I'll give more details about it later, but I wanted to emphasize one extra little bonus of this whole thing. We have a server, an on-premise server, that I called it the purchased software SQL server, because we would have different discount systems or name tag systems, different tools that we'd buy, the company would buy, and they all needed to have a SQL server behind as the back end. So we threw all those little databases on one server because they were small enough and safe enough to get along. So instead of migrating those to the cloud, we just upgraded the software to the cloud version of the software and got rid of those databases. So now our IT department doesn't have to worry about maintaining that server or answering questions about that software. Now the subject matter experts in those particular departments, they just go directly to the help desk support of that vendor, and we just save time. We can add business value instead of do boring maintenance stuff. So this might be a little bit of a blurry screen, so I apologize. But this is the type of data that we think about. A lot of tickets, a lot of surveys, secondary tickets, parking, some financial stuff. This is a lot of information that's in our data warehouse. So we'd pull daily, hourly, or faster information from these external businesses, whether we had SSIS packages, or we have Python scripts or ODBC connections, collecting all this information and sending it to our data warehouse, the ETL process. And originally, we had quite a few SQL Server 2019 standard and Windows 2019 standard on quite a few virtual servers. A couple of physical servers. Tableau sitting on a virtual machine. Within that data transfer process, we would do quite a bit of aggregation and classifications and deriving fields, save our data scientists some time. When I focus on the Dynamics 365 environment, we took our database from 425 gigabytes to 60 gigabytes. And that was nice because our SQL Server was getting to the point where it took forever to do a backup. And what we did was we said, any customer information that has zero activity in the last 5 years, we just didn't migrate it. And we also got rid of any attached documents because we would email customers about information. A lot of times there would be attachments that go along with those emails. So I found a way for an SSIS package to connect to the CRM, take that attachment, it was stored in a binary format, and I saved it to a SharePoint folder. And I had a script that would just automatically go through and look at every attachment and save it to SharePoint. And then I made the cloud version not even save those attachments. We just saved the email because our Exchange server has the attachments if we ever really needed it. And we used a tool called Kingsway software, which was fantastic for CRM migrations to the cloud. And that's actually another reason why we stuck with Dynamics Online, because the data structure of Dynamics Online is the same data structure as the on-premise. There's a context table, accounts table. And Kingsway software had these set of SSIS packages that not only had a template of how to pull from those tables, but the order of how to pull them so you don't have orphan records. It was really, really helpful. It actually, using their tool, actually taught me how to best migrate the data. And I know this particular group is not necessarily a Dynamics, like Dynamics is not always the topic of this type of user group, but I thought it was relevant because I used a SQL server as this middle piece to communicate between the on-premise server and the cloud instance. I set up the cloud instance, and then I had a little SQL server running with all these Kingsway SSIS packages that would pull from the old and push to the new and do all this logic in the middle. And every day I would get the daily differences in all these tables and send them over. And the users had no idea when they're testing. They're actually using the production system to do all their tests and validation. And every day I had jobs that would clean up their data. So we never had any junk data sitting in the production system. So I actually had the live production system up a few months before we were officially going live, because I wanted to see if it really worked, and it made the migration very easy. which was good. But to get rid of all that extra data was really helpful. And there's all kinds of utilities that help you with moving data to SharePoint, and I learned a lot. So looking at the data warehouse, like the CRM, I had a lot of conversations with people who were based in AWS or based in Google, and they were fascinating. We wanted something simple. It just seemed like having Dynamics Online would be very easy to integrate with an Azure SQL database, like the Dataverse and the Azure Data Factory and the Azure SQL database. They would blend well together. So it was easiest to stay in the same like Microsoft umbrella for this kind of work. And again, I shrunk. I think we had, I don't know if I put the numbers in here. I think I had probably 800 gigabytes of data between the ETL process, the staging tables, and the real, facts and dimensions and hierarchies. And then when I got it over to the cloud, we had less than 300 gigabytes. So it can benefit you to migrate because you clean out a lot of junk. You find better ways to process things. A lot of times too, we wanted to do this work ourselves because anytime I talked to a vendor, they wanted to have, I guess I'm exaggerating in my statement here, but I don't want to have 600 design meetings with the vendors and teach them how our business works. I want to understand this technology so that if I have consulting firms help me, I can guide them and I don't have them running up the bill with all these ideas that aren't really helpful to our business. But again, the business analysts, they slowly changed their Tableau reports. Once they felt like they got matching numbers, they slowly switched the connections of their Tableau reports from the old database to the new one. And it went well. It went. With all of the decisions we had, and I didn't really see this in a lot of the online trainings that I did or a lot of big demos that I saw. When you think about the technology, you also have to think about the size of your business. It seems like a lot of companies, they have 10 DBAs and they've got 5 architects and they've got a security person and they've got a 3 or 4 CRM people, and we're a very small shop, and we don't have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data. So Synapse seemed great, but it was almost too big. And I wanted to go with something small and then grow the system as our number of users grow or as our business grows. And actually, that's the benefit of the cloud from what I could see. You can grow or shrink as much as you need. Whereas when you're on premise, you're only going to grow to the max size of your hardware and you can't shrink. So if you make a bad estimate on your server, then you're eating that cost. It's kind of like a goldfish, right? The goldfish grows as big as the tank that it's in. So I learned about Azure Data Factory, and that was cool. Um, I had to think about first getting the facts, dimensions, and hierarchies in the cloud, because that's what our business analysts would connect to and make all the reports. And a lot of staging tables had to be put in the cloud. A lot of stored procedures that would move stuff from staging to the real tables. Unfortunately, I had to leave some logic in the on-premise virtual machine. I'm still looking at, there's a couple of difficult scenarios I have with API calls that I haven't found an easy solution for, like a lot of nested JSON. I had a lot of demos with third party, like these vendors that claim they can do ETL very easily. And I would do a demo with them, but there just wasn't a wow factor. It didn't seem any easier than if I just wrote the Python script myself. So there's a little bit of the ETL stuff that's on premise. I'm discovering ways to do it. And I welcome all comments and suggestions on strategies you might have with very complex API calls and very complex JSON results, and see what you do. So I heard a wise person once say many times, don't let perfect get in the way of good. So you start this cloud, you know a certain amount of information, you take online trainings, but you don't know until you do, right? Experience the best teacher. So thankfully I had a Microsoft engineer under our support agreement. We have certain hours by Microsoft that would kind of give me advice on how to build things. And they were very helpful. So basically our process was make a bunch of blob folders and grab stuff on my little on-premise virtual machine from using Python, generate some CSV files, dump it over to the blob storage, and then I'd have the Azure Data Factory scoop it up and load in the data warehouse and stored procedures loaded into the facts and dimensions. It worked out well. So the kind of nervous thing and exciting thing for a lot of people was we had one set of components in our CRM that were depending on we have an external software vendor that integrates into it. We had to work out with them a fixed schedule. Okay, this is going to happen on whatever it was, April 10th or April 11th. No problem. And then we had let's just say we had an issue with when opening day was for the season. That got delayed. So then we found we're going to have to switch our CRM the day before opening day. And everybody was in panic. But thankfully, because we really, in reality, had it running for 5 months before opening day, we weren't, us working on the team, or us working in this group on this project, we're not worried. It was everybody else, outside of this, they were nervous. And all we did was switch the URL for all the users. Don't go here, go here. And everything went smoothly. And now we feel like we can control our own destiny. We have a lot less hardware for IT to worry about, and we can scale as much as possible. And we have really integrated all kinds of surveys and like DocuSign, a lot of chat bots and just all kinds of third-party tools out there that can really connect to our CRM seamlessly and save users all kinds of time. And we have actually virtual entities. It's like a virtual reference table in our CRM that points directly to our data warehouse, which is now in the cloud. So those two systems can see each other. Our end users can see a lot more data that they need on demand in one screen. It's great. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking back the other day, I forgot to put this in the presentation. With our old CRM, there were times it would just get really slow for 10, 15 minutes randomly every few months. And I did everything I could to troubleshoot. What is going on with this? I had support calls. And when we went everything to the cloud, it's never happened since. I mean, it's ran smooth. And I think it either had to do with somebody connecting to our CRM database, running heavy queries, bogging the system down, or one of the tools that we did have integrated getting stuck and causing a domino effect. But we simplified the system. We got rid of a whole lot of data. And now Microsoft maintains the Dataverse behind the scenes. We don't touch it. It's just much better. And it's kind of funny with the Azure SQL database in the cloud. We learned a lot, and we're still learning. But the funniest thing was, I'm not sure how many of you have gone to the pricing calculator that Microsoft offers. It really was helpful to have that. The bottom line is, it allowed me to make an estimate for a monthly budgetary amount, and the total estimate was right. And I didn't really see those kinds of estimates with Google or Amazon. I mean, AWS. Maybe they exist. I just couldn't figure them out or couldn't find them. But the odd thing was with the calculator, I estimated the database storage to be expensive and a lot of the ETL to be cheap, but it was reversed. The ETL process, that was expensive, but the data storage was cheap. But, six of one, half dozen of the other, we still stayed under the monthly budget. So it was good. And since then, I found better ways to do the Azure Data Factories. One of the places we connect to is to get our data is a Google Cloud platform, a lot of BigQueries. And I used to connect, have some scripts that ran SQL queries, download a CSV, send it over to Blob, have Azure Data Factory loaded up, and it's a big circle. And since then, I have found ways that Azure Data Factory can connect directly to the GCP and grab the data. So I discovered when you churn all these CSV files, it really spins the motor on the dollars. And one time I found not a bug, but I found a discrepancy in some of the old data in our food and beverage, and I had to reload all the food and beverage for the season. Well, I discovered after that, it hit our invoice much more than I wanted to, much more than I expected. And I had my boss asking me, what happened this month? Thankfully, we were still under our budget because I made a high estimate. But that time it hit a red flag. So we learned. But the amazing thing with Azure in the cloud, I've learned so much about the key vaults and Microsoft Defender and managed identities. I'm tightening down the security more and more. We discovered as we went, you need to have these Azure virtual networks set up for good security. Well, we're working with people on that and have worked with people on that. And what was kind of cool is the Query Store. I know Query Store was available on on-premise SQL, but it seems easier with Azure SQL Database for some reason. It just when you're in the cloud, you have more modern tools. You have easier ways of discovering things. Some pain points, I thought, like I said before, some of the very, very complex APIs, I'm still looking for a good solution. I tried looking at the Azure Durable Functions. Azure Durable Functions calling Python scripts. It was actually running really slow. So I'm looking for a better way there, but we'll find it. You can't learn it all in one day. To make it easier for estimating my budget, I base it on the DTU model. But since then, I'm looking at the vCore. We'll probably do some switching around with that. Logic apps I found completely messy. I haven't figured those out at all. So if you're a Logic app person, I look forward to your presenting in a future Chicago Data Professionals Group meeting. Same with Azure Durable Functions. That'd be a good one too. Some great discoveries. Have your Azure, to have your data warehouse working in parallel with your CRM, you can actually reduce costs in your CRM because I've got daily jobs that pull a lot of our customer information out of the CRM into their data warehouse. I store a lot of years of data in our data warehouse, and I keep the CRM only a couple of years of data. It keeps it lean. It keeps it running faster, and it's cheaper. You pay a lot for storage in Dynamics. You pay a lot less in SQL. You can do your performance tuning in Azure SQL Database. You can't do any performance tuning in the Dataverse. So it's good to use your warehouse to help your CRM. That was kind of a byproduct of all the projects, but it was a good lesson. And I think another reason it's good to keep within one ecosystem, but obviously you never want to stay permanently committed to one vendor. It's always good to look at competition. It's always good to try new things from other places. But these two things, I think it's good to keep them together.
Hey, can we go back a slide?
Yeah, we sure can. This one or one before?
One before.
Okay, that one?
What is the DTU model?
That's picking a fixed amount of space, storage space for your Azure database, and a fixed processing amount. So I wanted to start off as cheap as possible. So forgive me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but I picked like the smallest one DTU was, I think, 100 gigabytes and one processor, something like that. And that's what you're paying for. It doesn't matter if you only use 2 gigabytes out of that 100. It's great for budgeting because you know exactly what you're going to get, and when it maxes out, you just see that little chart on the page where it shows you your monthly invoicing and your processing. You see that line just max out at 100%. The vCore, that gives you a lot more flexibility with what your processor is and what your hard drive space is and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm at a point now where I'm fine with the amount of space we have, but I'd like things to run faster. And the DTU is a little bit too simplistic for me. So I'm exploring switching to the vCore. However, first I want to start with apples to apples. I want to try to find that vCore, the vCore measurements that match my DTU. So when I flip that switch, I don't have an invoice shock. So I'm experimenting in our test environment right now. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good question. And yeah, I guess I didn't mention that the SQL Server Management Studio 21 preview. I liked how that has Git integration. I would love to check in all my stored procedures into Git
Mhm.
and track that stuff and table schemas and things like that. So, the bottom line is now as we work with external vendors, we can control our own destiny. We can manage our vendors instead of our vendors managing us. And we can integrate to all kinds of systems. We simplified a lot of the processes, especially what our business users were doing. Less pressure on the IT department; they're busy enough. And we're looking for improvement and new functionality, but we're also looking at cost savings as we do things. And I saw somebody in one of the presentations a while back. They said they actually put in their annual review, hey, I saved $10,000 a year because I fine-tune these 27 queries. You can't do that with on-premise. You fine-tune a query, it's good job, the system runs faster. You do that in the cloud, and you're actually saving the company money, and you can report that. Well, over the next 10 years, that's going to save the company, $100,000. Good deal, So that's pretty smart. So what's coming up next for us? Obviously, the same with the rest of the world. What's next with AI? We do want to automate a lot of the machine learning, data science stuff. I'm not a data scientist, but I want to make life easier for our data scientists. They do a lot of R scripts. Wouldn't it be nice to automate a lot of it for them, help them do a lot of the data cleansing? Our Tableau is still on premise, but we're looking at moving that to the cloud or looking at Power BI and Fabric. And I'll tell you, I got a whole bunch of stuff working a couple of years ago. I think it was I was logged in remotely watching all the presentations from Microsoft Build 2023, and they introduced Fabric. And I thought to myself, oh, I wish they built the Fabric 2 or 3 years before. I would have started with that from scratch. We'll see where we go with that. I haven't convinced the organization that Fabric is the way to go, but it's very interesting to me, compelling. Those are probably the 3 biggest things. And a couple of books I read, like I was telling Ross earlier, I take the train every day. So I love to read books on the train. And these are 3 books that I find very helpful. The last 2 I got just at the past summit, but they summarize a lot of what I've done. And Jake Switzer from Microsoft, he actually was one of the Microsoft engineers who helped me design a lot of this stuff, and he wrote this book. And I read the book to give me a lot of pointers on what I've done the last couple of years. And I mean, that's all I got. These are just questions I thought of. Everybody designs their projects based on their business needs, based on the experience they have. I'm not saying this is the way to move things to the cloud. I'm saying this worked for us and it really helped us. And one of the reasons why I wanted to present this is because I actually welcome people saying, hey, if you had done these steps instead of these steps, you would have saved yourself even more time, you know? So I welcome your thoughts and your recommendations.
Did you spend a lot of time on tagging in a consistent way and naming conventions?
Tagging, you mean like when you create like a new blob storage and you give it a tag for the invoicing?
Yeah, I think any resource, yeah, you can put a tag on it. Yeah, it helps with the
Yeah.
billing. Yeah.
Yes, I did. It's a little bit sloppy, but I do it. Yes.
Okay. I know I had a client too that ended up regretting. They started off with just a POC, and long story short, it became production. So they really regretted not splitting up their prod and non-prod a little better when you first get to
Oh.
Azure.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do that
Yes.
landing zone, you really got to pay attention to your subscriptions and all that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And landing zones, we have discovered, yes. And thankfully, I don't know if it was through good planning or just good fortune, but we started off with a test subscription. We call it a test. Everything we put in there was test. And then after we got some momentum, I created the production ones all separate.
No.
But yes, getting the tags in there, that helps. That really does. And I will know if, let's just say, if somebody else in the organization, if the IT department gives them access to Azure and they start making things, and all of a sudden our bill explodes,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be able to look at the tags and say, hey, that's not us. It's a blank tag. So, and what was your other question? The tags and what was naming conventions. Oh, you meant naming conventions of the tags, right?
No, every resource, every,
Mhm.
resource groups and servers and even Azure SQL databases, the naming conventions are so long and crazy sometimes. I know it's hard to keep them consistent.
Yes, that's a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, I tried, but there was one day I tried naming something, and no matter what I tried, it would pop back and say, it's already been taken, it's already been taken. And yeah, that drove me a little crazy once. So then you end up with longer naming conventions, right? So you start with the shorter ones. It's almost like when you built it, because the older stuff had short names, the newer stuff had longer names,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I had one client that divested a company, so they actually had to split their Azure into another tenant.
Oh yeah.
And
Ooh.
yeah, that was really interesting. But it gave me they also had on-prems going on still too. So I got to see a lot of stuff that I don't usually see as a DBA type person, where they were doing just the networking alone, all the route tables and the firewalls and
Mm.
just trying to keep track of where everything was. If you didn't have it named right, you don't know if you're even looking at what object you're looking, it was wild.
Gosh, I don't even know how you'd move stuff from one tenant to another
It's not
in the
easy.
cloud.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, a lot of
Huh.
it you had to start with another separate subscription, and then you could move the subscription, I think, or something. I don't remember all the details now, but yeah, it was painful. There were some things you just can't even move.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you got to just rebuild it from scratch and move the contents, maybe. Wow.
One of the problems I had was, or that we had, is that we started going to AWS. Things were just out of control. Some department would say, "Well, hey, we want a Aurora database," and then they would go over our heads and go right straight to the solution architects, which we call platform automation, and they'd set it up and say, "Yeah, no problem. Here you go." Now you fast forward a few years later, and somebody comes along and says, "Hey, our costs are out of control." Then we're finding out all these rogue um, um, instances of Aurora,
Huh.
and so they say, "Okay, Ross, go find out who owns these and see if you can shut them down." So,
That's for sure. The cloud, if you don't manage the cloud, you'll run up your costs. And if you give too many people owner rights, yeah, you're gonna have the Wild West.
yep. Yeah,
For
that's what we got.
Mhm.
I had that problem on-prem once even too. When your organization gets big enough and you have enough distinct roles, we had a team that all they did was install SQL Server. And they would just, any department would come to them and say, we want a new SQL Server. They were supposed to come to the DBA group first to get
Mhm.
permission or blessing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, as architects, but they would just, just create servers constantly. It was so bad.
Yep. I've heard that song before. Yeah,
Yep.
one of my favorite stories was SQL Express. I forgot the old name for it anymore, but they came along and said that, well, we can just create our own free version of whatever it was
Mhm.
called before, and they did, and their database got too big for it. It got to the point it wouldn't work, and there was nothing I could do for them. Afterwards, they come to me with a hat in their hand, and they say that, "Oh, can you help us?" Well, it's I can't back this up. I can't restore it into another version of SQL Server. It's
Yep.
I couldn't get it to
Uh-oh.
get it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
SQL Express, yes.
Yeah,
What a mess.
yeah, that's right up there with. Well, we'll do it this way, but it's only temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. Well, are you going to make your slide deck available?
I can. I don't know how.
Well, what you'd do would be to send it to me, and then
Okay.
what I would do is on our website, we've got a resources, which
Okay.
is where our recording will actually get stored on our YouTube channel. But that link to that YouTube channel gets put in our resources portion of our webpage.
Do you
And
want? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, please go ahead.
I was gonna say, you've got the PDF. Do you want an actual PowerPoint slide?
Oh no, the PDF will be fine.
Okay.
I'll
You
just
can use the
that.
one I sent this morning should work then.
Okay, great.
I haven't
great.
made any updates since, so.
Well, I guess more or less I wanted your permission to do that.
Oh yeah, you can put it up there.
You know, I didn't want to do that and then have you say, "Hey Ross, what the heck are you doing?"
Nope. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for this, Rod. This was great.
Thanks, Rod.
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
Yep, sure.
Yes, sir.
Hey, yeah, my name is Prashant. So, we had I created a managed instance, I migrated my on-prem databases, and our security team had configured Microsoft Entra with MFA. So it's very hard for service account, to use that for my application. So we are in a little bit the problem, I heard the solution to use converting to the SQL login, but that's how to store the password, right? So thinking like you guys face that issue or something, and you have way like a manage identity you guys have configured or service principal, anything else? Because I was looking, like any hybrid the Windows 80 account, I can use it to leverage, configuring into the Microsoft Entra. Because when I migrated my database, I migrated my logins, and I can see that my Windows 80 has mapped, and proper permission, I was able to assign that one with my Microsoft Entra that on Microsoft.com, right? So that's having issue.
Okay, so if I hear you right, you're saying you had an on-premise database, you moved it to the cloud, you had Entra IDs working. When you moved it to the cloud, some of them broke. And you don't know what to do with those broken.
Not the
Entra-
Entra, right? Because on-prem has a Windows 80.
Yeah.
And when I moved to the cloud, so is a Azure ID, right? So now is a
Mm.
Entra ID. So security team has to configure, some of the logins
Mhm.
and map with the AD to AAD, Azure AD. So I can see that, when I was migrating my logins and it was mapped. So I was able to migrate the login. So it has the same permission into the server and database as like my on-prem having, but only the things, because they have configured like a MFA, and it's not a conditional, right? So every time like it's popping up that browser things, code and all those things, multi-factor authentication. And for service account, when application need to use, nobody's there. We don't want to leverage that one. So we were
Oh,
looking.
okay. So yes, in those cases, yeah, I discovered in Azure, I can use either the managed identities as a service or managed identities as user created. And those, there's no login. Like I can have my Azure Data Factory use that managed identity to connect to the database. I can have our CRM use I think in CRM it's application user, which connects to an app registration in Azure,
Right.
and that has
Yeah.
the managed identity. It's kind of like goes through four different connections, but it gets there. And
Yeah.
then
So I configured that the service principal, like system assign, and for app registration, right? I grab the client ID and value, but only the problem I have to remember because only 24 months I have to renew it, right? Recreate it. So that's the issue,
yes.
We try like a passwordless, but there's another thing, you need to renew every 24 months, that secret.
Mhm. You're right.
So
I have a little Outlook task to remind me in a year or 6 months or 2 years, go refresh that. And that would be a nice little enhancement of Microsoft to send you reminders. Hey, your app registration user is about to expire. Go update the secrets. Uh, that'd be a good thing.
yeah. So is it manage identity? Did you try the manage identity in your environment?
Yeah, it works well. Um, it was a little tricky at first for me to learn and set up, but then after that, it's great. I had to make sure in whether it was the blob or the data factory or the database, whatever Azure object I was using, I had to go into the security of that thing and make sure that managed identity had certain rights. And then
Yeah, right.
I had to make sure Azure could use a managed identity. And there's like one section saying you can use managed identities, and the other one saying, okay, this thing needs to use that particular managed identity. Like both ends need to have that managed identity with certain rights to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That was the tricky part.
Okay.
But
Yeah. No, good. Yeah. So service principal when you configure, right, for manage instance and manage instance as multiple databases. So you configure each secret, create like for app registration, each database separate, or you just create one random for whole instance.
I used different ones for each instance because I wanted to know if there was an issue, which managed instance did it. But everybody's got their style. I suppose it'd be easier to use one common one.
Yeah, if you have multiple databases and you have to renew after 24 months, then you have to start again, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, somehow like my migration journey did not work like smoothly, because when I started to migrate and I have to uh, take the backup on-prem database and store into my storage account, I cannot, I was getting like that 53 error, 53, the error and access denied, and it did not work.
Oh,
I take the backup into my share folder and I try to upload from the browser, the portal, right? And then smaller file I was able to upload, but bigger file I cannot upload. It was just um, throwing the error, and it
you
was
know,
not showing into the anything logs like what kind of error.
yeah. Well, now that you mention it, I did not take a backup of my database and restore it in the cloud. I I took a lot of my I would right click on a table and do generate script, and then I took that script and I put it in the cloud, and then I edited it and I recreated the new table. I probably have couple hundred tables in the database. And I know this might make some of you cringe, but I manually created those tables in the cloud because I wanted to get rid of a bunch of useless columns. I wanted to change a few data types. I made it more efficient in the cloud. I kind of redesigned it as I moved it in the cloud. And then I created an Azure Data Factory that would just copy the contents of each table and copy the on-premise table, move it to the cloud table, copy the on-premise table, move to the cloud table. Because then I did a little bit more cleaning in the process too. So it's a little bit slower, but I ended up with a cleaner system that way.
No, I got you. It's a
So,
better approach, because you don't want to take garbage right into the cloud when you're
right.
moving,
Yeah.
It's little time consuming. It's a good approach, because we have like a lot of big tables and like a lot of tables, So like moving database, I thought might be the little bit easier approach, But
Mhm.
I also faced that problem, even AZ command did not work, like when I was moving that my backup that doing, then even I downloaded the Azure Storage Explorer, it having the
Yes.
same issue. It did not work.
Yeah, the Azure storage. I use the Azure Storage Explorer to back up a few of my critical blob storage folders in case somebody deletes some files. I've got to back up to I back it up to a shared, like a OneDrive folder,
Right, right.
just in case. That Storage Explorer is pretty handy, but yeah, with database stuff, it probably is so slow it times out or something.
And it was weird, because I was trying to play to get an exit idea that few MBs I can upload from the portal, but certain like if I go like maybe 50 MB plus or 60 MB plus, it was kicking me out. And it was strange, when I involved Microsoft support and they got a little bit like a weird feeling, like why it's allow you to smaller file and not bigger file,
Yeah.
We try to capture the logs, direct log, but we couldn't find much, it was not a favoring luck for us, and then I
Yeah.
tried to different way playing with that, and I thought like let me just use the public one, for my network allowing. So if any firewall networking blocking me, instead of going, and only that option right now working for me, that's the helping. Otherwise, I cannot move my on-prem database to the cloud.
Hmm.
And Microsoft couldn't figure it out even, like what the storage access, why you have that issue.
Huh. Well, I can't think of anything right now, but I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, sure, because I saw when I was listening, I was a little late, but I was listening your journey, and it's a very good topics, because we can learn something, from the whatever you face, like bad way, good way, right? So it's a good thing, I'm glad, I joined this meeting.
Yeah, when I first saw key vaults, I thought, what are those? but they end up saving you a lot of time.
They sure do.
No, definitely,
It's almost like we made our plans to migrate, and then every day we're not just discovering better ways to do things, we're discovering new tools to do new tools of what can be done, but it's good. You just can't learn unless you do it. You just can't. The best way to discover things is to start working on it. So
yeah, and I saw that you mentioning SSMS 21, yeah, it's a good.
it'll be good. It'll be good when it goes in. I don't know, maybe it has been released, but I think it's still in preview, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on preview. Yeah, it's on preview. Yeah.
So
Is it any way you can copy paste like I think couple Mordek back? There is a couple resources, like Azure Data Fundamental, like the guide and those things. Because I'm thinking to go for the certification because a little bit I have time now. My project got slowing down right now.